Hello, hi, good morning, Mr. Vidal. How are you doing?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can hear you good.
All right.
Can you
How
hear
are
me?
you, Abdullah?
Good morning to you. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. What time is it in your where you
So in
calling?
India, it's right now 10 o'clock at the night.
Oh, it's quite late then.
No, it's actually a good time for me actually because I have a day job, so I have to come running home and then work on all this. So this
I
is
see.
the most appropriate time for me, and that's why our discussions took a long route, to reach on this time. But
Oh, yeah.
how's everything there in North Carolina? How's the weather there?
It's a beautiful spring day today in North Carolina, and I thought of like taking this call outside because it's Earth Day, and we're talking about nature stuff. So I said, okay, maybe I'll take it outside.
That's a good background. That's really nice of yours. And how have you been? How's your life going?
It's been doing so far so good. I'm really glad that you guys decided to publish my story. I'm I, I was really excited to see it in print. And you guys did a really great work. It was really well made. A lot of good artwork, a lot of good stories in there. So very happy to have been considered for that special issue of yours. So thanks. And yeah, I mean it's work is going on. I'd also have a day job. I don't write full time. But I am trying my best to get my work published out there. And then hopefully as I later in my career I might decide to kind of shift a little bit more towards literary pursuits versus what I'm currently doing now.
That's amazing. But first of all, let me introduce you to, our audience, to our readers, to our viewers. So everyone, we've got one of the winners of our fiction writing contest. We have Mr. Bernardo Vidal Jr. with us today. And I request you to please share something about yourself to our audience.
Sure. So I was originally born in the Philippines. I grew up there and then got married there, had my first daughter there. And then in 2006, well, even before that, I moved out of the Philippines. I actually lived in Singapore for 4 years. And then from there, moved to the US with my wife and my one child at that time, my daughter. And then I had my son also here while I was in the US. Professionally, I have an engineering background. So I have a PhD in biological and uh, agricultural engineering. And my current work involves developing enzymes and microbes for industrial use with the hope of trying to displace more and more of the chemicals coming from fossil fuels with things that are out in nature. So that's kind of my day job. But my passion really is in literature. Even when I was in college back then in the Philippines, I was part of our college editorial uh, our paper, a college paper. I was features editor. I have been writing also poetry and short stories when I was in college, but kind of like that tapered off a little bit when I was doing sort of my studies and my sort of my career, right? But the love for literature has always stayed with me. I read a lot. I admire a lot of really good writers, and it doesn't matter for me, fiction, nonfiction, but I'm really drawn towards fiction and really good stories. So that's how I sort of like never lost that love for literature has always stayed with me. I did some writing here and there, nothing really, but then I think later on, with the kids already grown up, right? And there's that tendency for you to kind of like revisit old love, right? So that sense of like feeling of like, I may have, what if I had decided to really pursue literature as sort of my first career instead of, so those things come back to you in a way, haunt you, right? Later in life. So that's where I find myself now in, is like maybe a year or 2 years ago I decided to, let me take up writing again, a lot more, put a little bit more time and effort in it. And then I said, like, and let me try if I could get it out there, right? And have people read it and see what they think. So that's kind of where my journey is at now, Abdullah.
Okay. No, because that was going to be my second question, that why didn't you, pursue a career as a writer instead of becoming an engineer? But I think that's very clear to me now.
Yeah, so I did love science too, right? And I have a passion for, like as you said, like how can we help the how can we help society in some ways other than literature. But also, well, life happens too, right? I mean, got married, had a child to support, and sometimes you have to make, like, okay, how do I balance the needs, and the economic needs, and so that kind of played a role as well. But like I said, you once you fall in love with literature, I don't think you can get away from it. So
I agree with you. Having a day job also matters, but
yes,
writing, literature is the essence of life.
I
Is
think
that
so.
right?
I totally agree. Yes.
So tell me, like, how did you land up with the Hemlock Journal, with your entry, Sigbins?
It's funny, actually. It was my daughter who who kind of channeled me to you guys, because she found that, I think from a website, that there was a contest or something. I wasn't intending to at first to submit for it, and I said, like, I don't know if I can, because it's a contest. It's a little bit intimidating. Having no, not having. I have, perhaps before this, I have one publication. It's like in the US, right? I submitted a short story and get but that was about the extent of my publication before I joined the contest. So I was a little bit intimidated. Said, like, maybe I'm not ready, but she said, "Oh, go give it a try. Why not?" Right? So, and so I said, okay, I'll go ahead and give it a try. And so I came up with the Sigbin again because I feel like, uh, I want to, in my stories, the stories I like to write, at least, and the stories I like to read, I like to put different elements into it, right? And of course, I have a background in science. I said, like, oh, I want to have a little bit of like scientific sort of element to it, but at the same time, I want to infuse it with my own culture. And Sigbin is, I'm inspired by a mythical creature that is very, very much sort of indigenous to where I came from, which is in the central part of the Philippines. So it's part of our lower mythology, where we have this creature that's supposed to be like invisible, and it can take any kind of shapes and forms. And I'm sure in other cultures they have those kind of sort of mythical creatures as well. So I want to introduce that into the story as well. But I think I want what I was playing with was basically the theme of, like, this tension between knowledge and mystery, right? And I wanted to kind of, ask the question, interrogate whether, because we are coming from, at least in a culture where knowledge seems dominant, right? Knowledge seems to be given preeminence before everything else. And I want to question that a little bit, because even coming from a scientific background, I say, well, is it always the case that knowledge is the most important? Are there times, or there are moments where actually mystery, right? A sense of mystery, a sense of not knowing, a sense of uncertainty, and lack of perfection of knowledge actually might be the right course in life, right? And I totally believe in that. I don't think that knowledge is always the most important thing. I mean, I think knowledge also comes from our desire to control things. And we know that nature, for example, is never controllable, right? So complete knowledge of nature doesn't really mean that that is the best way to kind of interact there, or that's best way to immerse yourself in the natural world.
Yes, I completely agree with you. When I read the story myself, I had to, Google it, YouTube it, to understand the origins of the Sigma.
Okay.
So I wanted you to shed more light on it. Like, what is it about your folklore, mythology that appealed to you, that you wanted to incorporate this in your piece of writing?
Sure. And again, I go back to the theme, Abdullah, of uncertainty and the lack of perfection of knowledge, right? Because what is interesting about the Sigbin is that you can ask anybody and they will not be able to give you the same picture of it. It's almost like everyone has their own version of Sigbin, right? Somebody might say, "Oh, it looks like a wild boar." Or some people, "Oh no, it's actually more like a like a kangaroo," right? So people have different versions of it. So it's a very interesting, uh, I would say, a very interesting character in the sense that it almost has its own life, whoever tries to imagine it. So each one's imagination has its own version of it, right? So again, it really is a very good way to kind of represent what it is like when you have a true mystery, when you have true subjectivity, right? And you don't really know exactly what a thing is, and it all keeps on like being defined differently as you go from one person to another. So that was my inspiration of using that, but at the same time really using a way to kind of play around the theme again of like, is knowledge really the most important thing? And then if I kind of put a parallel to it, to the ending, for example, the story where you had a little bit of, maybe you could call it a little bit of an irony there, that when Micah said that, well, here is happiness, right? Running after me. And that is coming from a lack of knowledge that what is going to transpire, right? Because what's going to transpire is probably her knowing that there was some betrayal that was done, right? And so I think it comes back to that sometimes not knowing is not always the worst thing in life. Sometimes not knowing is probably the better thing in life. And of course, not in all context, right? Yeah. But I think this obsession over knowledge, I think that is a problem of the modern world, I think.
I think uncertainty is the best certainty of all time.
Yeah. And
That
that's also why I like a good story, right? Because sometimes a good story, and when I write that too, there is that element of uncertainty too. I mean, I I kind of like to structure maybe a little bit about, like how maybe the characters, maybe some element that, or some structure that helps me along, but I don't want the story to be already preordained from the beginning. I want to have that little bit of uncertainty how it's going to unfold, right? So I don't really think it through the whole plot from beginning to end. I don't like that kind of story because then it feel like if I can already tell how it's going to end, then I'm sure the reader would be able to, right? This is kind of predictable story. I like that story to be a little bit of like, a little bit in a way unpredictable how it will unfold.
I can totally understand where you're coming from.
Thank
But
you.
I also wanted to understand, like, was this something that you wrote in one setting, or did you have to go back and revise it and, prepare a final draft? So what was it?
I had to revise it a lot. And an interesting thing is like there are things that the story will reveal to you as you revise it. Right. So in the first writing, you have a certain way of like, okay, this is how it goes. But then when you go back to it, is it really is this really how it should happen, right? You can begin to ask yourself, you second guess yourself a little bit, like, is this really how the person would react? I mean, is this really how where I want my story to go to? So you would be surprised how the beginning, at least the first draft, and the last, at least the one that I submitted, right, has changed so much in terms of even the plot itself, right? But also the character. There are certain aspects of the character that maybe at the first writing you haven't really seen it, but then second writing, it's like, maybe it would be interesting if he actually did this, right? Or he actually shows a certain characteristic that I have not really fleshed out in the first draft. So I think it's always an ongoing process, and even like something that has been published, I'm not surprised if I revisit it a year or two from now and say, I should actually probably do it this way instead of that. So I think you're learning and you're growing as a writer as well. That's what I like about writing too.
That's great. That's great. It's a never-ending journey. But do you want to shed some light on what was the first draft like? Or do you,
Yes.
if you want to keep it to yourself, that's totally fine. Okay.
Yeah. So no, but the first draft was a lot longer, I'd say. And there was a lot more explication around the scientific part of it. But then you feel like, okay, well, I'm writing a story, right? I want this to be interesting. I want it to move, right? And sometimes when you explicate too much in a story, it kind of slows it down and kind of drags it a little bit. So I did some trimming there, actually. And then the character of Lisa, for example, the Australian marsupial expert, I had to kind of change her a little bit. She was a little bit dry in the first draft. And so I said, I want to put a little bit of interest in her, right? A little bit of an edge in her personality. And that's why I kind of like included some of the descriptions I had of Lisa there. And then the ending too, I feel like the ending had changed a lot as well. I did not uh, intend that to have that component of there was a little bit of a betrayer. It- but that is a twist that I in the final draft I said it I like to have it there. It just adds to the you know I think it adds a dimension to the story that I did not have in the first draft.
Hey, that's nice. I think I'm gonna go and reread it again after the meeting, you know?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, yes. But like how would you define like how has the journey been, since you submitted the entry till now, How has been the change in your personal and your professional life been?
Yeah, I mean, I've written maybe two, three more stories since then. And what I like to do is, I like the process of revision as well. Like I mentioned to you, right? That you don't have to worry too much about, you know, the first draft is always quite stressful for me because it's a blank page, right? It's a bit daunting. You're trying to fill in a blank page, whereas when you have a second draft, a third draft already, you have already something on the page. And it's a question of like, okay, maybe I need to adjust it here and there. So it's less daunting. So it's a lot more, to me at least, the revision is a lot more relaxing. So I like to balance it a little bit. Right now I'm in a phase of revising a story for submission. And then I'm thinking once I'm done with that, I have a story idea that I want to get into. And then I'm in my writing phase. So I think from then to now, I've kind of found a good rhythm and pattern to my literary work, where I did not have that in the past. So that's why I'm very glad that I'm actually got this because this is a chance for me to kind of also be reflecting about my work, right, my craft. Where am I at? So I'm very glad that you guys had this interview. So it forces me to kind of think like am I how am I progressing here in my writing journey? And I think that's one of the things that I have found is finding a rhythm. I know I still have a day job, so I do like you. I do this also on the later at the evening, right? When I'm off my job and during the weekends, and I have to balance also with family and things like that. But I think I found my rhythm, and I find this combination of, having this writing phase and this revising phase, very yeah, very helpful for me.
That's nice. And how do you say like how has been the reaction from your family?
Oh, they're totally supportive of it. My daughter, especially, she's it's my so I have two kids. It's my daughter who kind of taken after my sort of my love for literature. She likes to read a lot. She writes poetry. She's more of the poetry, she genre. So we try to encourage each other, right? So she looks at my draft. I look at her poetry draft, and I kind of encourage her also to. Hey, you told me to join a contest. You should join a contest too. You should submit to journals and reviews as well. So we're both in this journey. I'm glad that I have somebody in the family who is walking with me on this.
I think she's your beacon light.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I just have this one question out of curiosity. Have you written anything on parenthood? Anything for your children? Anything for your daughter?
That's a good question. I have to I have to look back at my drafts if I have one there. Parent as a parent, that's actually a good inspiration for me, Abdullah. Maybe I should think about that. I don't think I have a character that I have somebody who is like I do have a story where it's a dynamic between the daughter and a father. but it is more the point of view is more from the daughter rather than the father. So
Okay.
you can see there is that, parent-child relationship in there. Uh and but it's coming more from the daughter perspective, from the child's perspective, not from the parent's perspective.
Okay. But
Yeah.
if there was something that you would want to tell your kids, when they grow up, any advice for them or anything that you wanna, moment that
Yeah,
you wanna look back on with them?
sure. Maybe two things. One is like I'd say uh do the thing that most meaningful for you, right? And I've always been very consistent about that with them. And it's sometimes the pressure of parents to want to see their kids be successful in life. That's very strong, right? I mean, you know how it is, and I know how it is for me to struggle, right? And make my way uh to the US. It wasn't easy, right? The journey was not easy. And for them, in a way, they are a better starting point that they are here. But I don't want them to lose sight that, what is really important is to live your life that you are meant to live, right? And that means one is like doing the things that you love. That's very important, right? And then second is like finding your place in history. That's also very important because I think each one of us is born into uh, a stage in the history of humankind where we are asked to do something important, that we have a calling, right? Whether it is protecting your environment, whether it's fighting for justice, whether it's for fighting for the rights and equality of the people. uh there is a calling for you. There's always is. So you have to find that, and you have to live that, because you have only one life. You have only one chance to live in this history of humankind. And if this is what you're asked to do, you should answer that. You should answer that calling. That is my if I have a lesson for them, that would be what I want to give.
Well, that's really heartwarming. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
Also,
thank
I
you.
wanted to ask you about your life back in the Philippines. How was it? Like, and how was the transition, moving to, Singapore and then, to the US?
Yeah, yeah. So you learn. I think you learn to. Uh, I think you learn to embrace the culture that you move into, right? I think that's one of the things that I kind of like uh, appreciate, that we are able to do that. But at the same time, I think something, and maybe it's not for all people, but at least for me, I realized that, no matter where I'm Filipino first. Uh, it doesn't, it never changes, right? And then maybe because I grew up there, maybe it's like a lot of significant part of my life was there, right? I got married there. My deepest friends are there. Uh, uh, I mean, I learned to love literature there, right? So I think that partly explains it. But there's something about place that I think it always remains in your heart. And so I always end up like, when I write something, I always write something from back home. And I not even like purposely do it, because it sounds truer to me when I write about the place and the people and the culture that I have grown up in. Regardless of, I've been in the US for so long already. If you ask me to write something here, I can do it, but it is not the same as if I would write as when I would write something from back home. So I think there's something about that. The place stays in the heart.
That's really, again, it's really heartwarming. Home is where the heart belongs.
That's true. Yeah.
And I also wanted to ask, you mentioned that you had published a work prior to this. So what was that about?
So yeah, so it's again, it's a lot of elements, right, that I put into there, but it has something to do with my experience during the COVID years, where
Okay.
I was more or less cooped up in the house, right? And there was this bird that likes to kind of bang its head, there's its beak against the window, and I started that was the inspiration of it all, and trying to kind of think like, what is causing it to do it, right? And then I connected it somehow to something around uh uh the cave in Indonesia, where they have this like cave art that's older than the one in Laco in France. I think it's Lascaux, I think it's the name of the place. But anyway, it's older than that. And it depicts something like a half human, half bird. And that was the idea that I played. And then I introduced something that back again from the culture uh, that came from, or there's this myth about a half human, half bird. So it all just comes together, at least in my mind. Right? At least the journal also thinks say things also that it came it's a little bit very almost disparate, right? But somehow it yeah, made it come together and publish it. It's called Birdhouse, by the way. Is the name title this of the story.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I'll definitely look into that. And
Okay.
yeah. And how would you say the review has been, from your colleagues, from your peers, from your friends, family, for like even the previous work you published and even for this work, which is
Yeah,
one.
yeah, I think that is maybe one thing that if I could get more uh criticism and review, that would really help a lot because I think right now like among I have a friend who is into writing as well. But they can be sometimes people can be very busy and it kind of I can get maybe a little bit of like review from him every now and then, but you can't have it for your all your stories, right? And then of course, my daughter can give her own opinions, but it's not like somebody who is already a more mature writer. So I think that maybe is if I have an access to some review and criticism of my work, I think that would help. So that's something that I'm constantly looking out for. I know there are some workshops, people do workshops where you can bring your stories and more advanced writers or more experienced writers could help you along and give you some criticism. I think that's something that I'm probably looking into in the future.
Okay, but how do you think like that criticism will help you going forward in your life?
I think it helps you because you mean in the story, right? Or
Yes,
story writing, right?
yes.
I think it's just like any craft, I think, right? That you need to have maybe another perspective from other writers which have been through your journey as well, because it's easy for maybe for us, especially beginner writers, to kind of you see a development, but then sometimes you hit a plateau because you just don't know of other ways of approaching, for example, story writing. And so I think having a different perspective coming from more experienced writer could sort of unlock a certain maybe paths that you haven't seen before. So that you're not constantly just doing it the same way, the same way, the same way.
Yeah, now I understand it. That's really important.
Yeah.
So, but have you ever been in a situation where you have faced a writer's block or maybe, suffered from self-doubt, which has stopped you from writing? Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, constantly, right? You have to grapple with self-doubt, especially when you get a certain part of your story where you feel like this is not really going well, right? Or I don't really have a story here. And then it sometimes gets exacerbated when you kind of read a really good story, right? When you read somebody you admire, for example, and then you kind of, why can't I write the same way, right? Why can't I get the same kind of results? So I think it can get frustrating, but I think you need to be a little bit also patient. I think that goes a long way. And sometimes you don't really have the emotional sort of maybe bandwidth to handle things, and because other things in life are there. So you need to be a little bit more maybe patient and self-forgiving if you get that in that situation. Then don't force it too much. Maybe you just need to go out and do some fishing. Get out from your mind, right? And do some more physical stuff, do some gardening, do some hiking. That usually helps. I think it frees up the mind and maybe unlock some insights that you haven't seen before.
Yeah, I remember that you even mentioned in your bio that you loved fishing.
I do. That is my other, yeah, that is my other passion. So,
So how often do you go for fishing?
the last one was Saturday. So I try to do weekends if I can find the time. There's a river not too far from us. It's about maybe 20 minutes to drive there. There are occasions when I get to the ocean, but that's like not that's rare because I'm probably like 3 hours away from there. So it's not, always that you can get. But if I get to there, then especially in the summer, it's coming up. Then yeah, I do some fishing in the ocean as well. Yeah, yeah. But I love the river. The river is a great place to, even if you don't catch anything, just being out there and being in nature, it's great.
So is it something that you do alone or do you take your family with you?
Usually in the river, I go by myself. It's a
Okay.
very solitary sort of, just like writing, right? But in the when I go to the ocean, I bring my son along. He also likes to do some fishing, so it becomes a little bit more social when I do that way. Yeah.
Okay. And what are your like plans moving forward? Is there any work that what we might expect in the near future?
So I continue to look out for like a place I could get my stories published, but I'm also trying to collect them because there is a common through line in my stories, which is really trying to incorporate the lower mythology of our of Visayas. We call it Visayas, the group of islands in the Philippines, and Sigbin is an example of that mythical creature. So the stories that write always has elements of this. So I kind of like there is common theme across, and so I feel like okay, maybe this is good to kind of collect them and then see if I could have enough of them to kind of actually warrant trying to publish a book length work. So that's my ambition.
Yeah, that's great. And I also wanted to know like what kind of books do you read?
Oh, a lot, right? I kind of span a lot of books, but again, I do a lot. Read a lot of fiction. I'm reading whether it's like US or English writers or Asian writers. I used to love reading Haruki Murakami.
Nice.
Love his stories. I love his novels. I've just read a Han Kang story as I'm sorry, novel as well. And then I read some old stuff too. Sometimes just for fun. Like I just read a John le Carre story as well. John le Carre novel as well. I read short stories, collections. There's one by I'm trying to recall the writer, Margaret Atwood, that I just finished reading, and I love it. It's like wow, she writes really well. So my reading is pretty diverse. I just go by like by feel, right? I don't have a very like very ordered way of like okay, this is what I should be reading. I kind of just follow where my heart leads.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
So which is your favorite book or some favorite work of yours?
Yeah, if it comes to like maybe since we are talking about literature and writing, one of the more recent ones that I read about writing that I really love is the one by Stephen King.
Okay.
I have to think about the title. I cannot recall right now, but it's the most recent one that I read about basically about his writing life and his writing journey, and that was really really informative for me. I really highly recommend that book. And then uh, on I read a lot of like like natural history as well. So I'm struggling to kind of think of one right now, but anything that is about like a place, for example, whether it's about a river or it's about uh anything about natural place and wild and wilderness that's something that I always like to read and I learn a lot about writers who write about those because it's not easy, right? Because when you talk about a natural a place, for example, there's not really things happening too much. But how do you make that interesting, right? How can you like tell, talk about like, animals roaming around or plants growing or and still make it sound interesting and universal. That to me is very challenging. If I could write something like that, man, I'll be very, very proud of myself if I can write something about natural history. So,
Okay. And just one question, because I always ask this question, to writers. So, which is that one book you wish you had written?
oh gosh, man. Okay. That is okay. That is very, very challenging. I don't know what is that one book I wish I had written. All right. This would probably blow you away a little bit because I've been talking about really hard stuff, but then if there's one I've written, I would say it's Charlotte's Web that I have written.
Oh, why so?
It's just so true. I mean, when I read it, it's just so true. It just tells you about life in very plain language, something that even children can understand. But it touches the heart. Like it's very true. You know. I mean, if I could write one book, that would be the book I would like to be able to write. Yeah,
I
or
read
to
it
have
like
written.
5 years ago when I was back in college.
Oh, you did? Okay,
Yes, yes.
man.
That's why, that's why I was surprised.
I reread it. I reread it almost every year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
when I
good.
get the chance, I reread it every year. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, my sets of question, I didn't really prepare any questions for you. I thought, I'll just hop on the call and, we'll discuss about everything
Sure.
that you've done. But before going, is there anything that you want to share with our writers or with, our audience, something that's in your heart that you want to share that you want to get in front of the world?
Yeah. I mean, I, again, thank you for the chance, right? The opportunity here to talk about something that I love to do. Uh, and if writing is what you want to do, I think it shouldn't be so difficult. Uh, and I think the idea is to just get started and to basically put your heart into it. I know there's a lot of things to consider if you really want to become a great writer, right? But maybe the ambition is not really to be a great writer, right? Maybe the ambition is just to be good enough in your craft so that you get to tell the story that only you can tell. I think that's it. I mean, you already given something of yourself to the world if you have put something on paper because that is something that comes from you and only from you as the unique individual. I think it's being able to write the story that only you can write. That would be my encouragement to others who likes to write.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much for that. That was really insightful. And I have to say, it was really lovely, talking to you. And
Likewise, Abdullah. Yeah,
And thank you once again for being associated with the Hemlock Journal.
glad to be associated with Hemlock Journal, and hopefully there'll be more opportunities for me to kind of contribute to you guys in the
Absolutely.
future.
And I will also hope that I'll get, one more chance to talk to you again.
That
But
would be great.
till then, all the best, stay healthy, and keep smiling and take care of your family.
Same with you, Abdullah. Yeah, take care, man. Have
Yeah,
a good
take
night.
care.
All
Bye-bye.
right,
See you
bye
soon.
bye.